Hey everybody, welcome to UX Chats, where we sit down with senior designers to solve real challenges that designers face every day. My name is Jordan, and I'm here with Taylor, and we're the creators of UX Tools.
Hi everyone.
Today our guest is Ioana from UX Goodies. Ioana, welcome to the show.
Hi Taylor, hi Jordan.
So can you tell our audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a senior UX designer. I run the Instagram account called UX Goodies. That's probably how most people that know me might know me from. I'm a senior designer. I've been working in different companies for the last couple of years, working with startups as a freelancer, but also held daytime jobs with different industries and different companies. And so the bottom line is that I've been doing a lot of things. And so I'm trying to bring this diverse background, if you want, and diverse perspectives to everything I share on UX Goodies and the content that I put there in general on other platforms. So I think that's me in a nutshell. Oh, and this year I actually launched a UX bootcamp, and this is what I'm most immersed in right now. So I'm also doing a lot of work in the UX education space, and I think that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're so excited to have you. We've been big fans of your content for so long, so it's great to have you on the show.
Yay, thank you so much. Thanks for the invite.
It's great to finally have you on. And I want to introduce kind of the topic that we'll be talking about with Ioana today. So let's say I'm a product designer wondering if I need to do UX research on every single project, or are there times that I can skip that? Ioana, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say that you should start by defining what UX research means in the first place. So I think that's key to having the right foundation for answering this question. And I think that if I were to give my definition of what UX research is, it's basic, and I think I'm paraphrasing Erica Hall here, it's basic a systematic inquiry. So you're trying to answer questions in an organized manner. So that means that research is basically answering questions. So I would say that whenever you have a question that you need to answer, you need to do research. So I would say start from that. Figure out why you would skip research. Is it that I have the answer already, or do I think I have the answer? And if you know that you don't have the answer, then definitely, yeah, that's I think a good starting point.
That was beautiful. I want to give that like a chef's kiss. That was perfect. And is very much what I've been thinking about as well in regards to this topic. Because I think we spend so much time fighting to help our organizations be customer centric and user centric, and we want to evangelize, the user any chance we can. And so it almost feels a little foreign to say that you don't need to do research sometimes. But I think what you said is exactly right. It's the idea that you may already have the answers to those questions. And sometimes a research study can actually give you enough insights for a few months of design work, right? You may be able to design many different things off of what you learn in one research study. So I think tying ourselves to this need to go do a serious contextual inquiry with 50 people, every week or every sprint or every month just isn't something that's going to scale, and it's going to prevent you from actually taking action on your research. And so I think this is especially applicable if you are a designer who's also doing your own research, right? This may shift a little bit if you have a research team, but yeah, certainly if you already have the answers to those questions, like you said, Ioana, you might be able to move around that a little bit.
And I also want to add another ingredient to the question bowl over here. So I think that another aspect that we might take into account is whether we know all the questions that we're asking. So sometimes I think that we're missing questions. So there are what I would like to call unknown questions that we're not asking. And so sometimes it's worth doing perpetual research or continuous research without going overboard. I agree with you, Taylor, that it's not necessary to have 50 interviews every week, but sometimes it's worth doing research even when you think you know the answers, because it might be that you're missing some questions. and just doing discovery research discovery work might help you come up with new questions that you should be asking.
Yeah, so that continuous research is really valuable. I think people just sort of do research off the cuff when they absolutely have to, but I think continuous research actually saves you time and saves you from doing research sometimes. Like, because you are figuring out the real problems and questions that you need to answer, and finding solutions to them. And then, like you guys have been saying, you can just rely on that when you go into individual projects, because you've already found out the questions that you need to answer, and you've come up with the answers, the solutions. There are lots of places that you can look for that. So some examples are analytics, customer feedback, support. You can even talk to your sales team. I think the general point is that not every single project needs to involve like a fresh batch of usability tests or user interviews or like these really deep dives into things. I think sometimes you can just rely on this continual research that you're doing, or just research that you've done for previous projects.
It almost feels like this swinging pendulum, right? Where eventually you have designed enough or built enough or changed the product or experience enough that you realize that you're getting a little bit out of touch with that experience, and the pendulum swings back, right? And you need to keep learning. And so eventually that experience will change enough that it is time to go to usability testing again, because it's different than the last time you did it, or your customer or your market has shifted since the last time you did that research. And so it's almost like this kind of swinging back and forth, right, of getting into execution mode and then back into learning mode. But as Jordan said, I think there's an opportunity there to integrate those more into continuous learning and continuous research, that we could probably have a completely separate topic about tools and some of the things we've been talking about on previous episodes of ways to do that. But just wanted to highlight that kind of like there's like a time and a place for each of those things. Go ahead, Ioana.
I just love the pendulum metaphor. I think it's great. And if I look back and I reflect on my career for the last couple of years, I feel like I've been in a cyclical, if you want, state of oscillating between the two states. It's really a nice image. What I wanted to say is that another thing that we should like factor or take into account is that sometimes the decisions are very minor, or maybe they don't have such a huge impact, while other times we're making important decisions, and that's when we should employ more research efforts. So I think that's another aspect that should weigh in this decision of should we do research or can we skip research. And I'm just thinking about situations where maybe you just want to change the corner radius to a button, or maybe you want to, I don't know, just change the illustration on a page. That's not very risky, probably. And while if you're like redesigning completely a page, then you should probably not skip research if you're doing major changes. So the impact or the size of the change you're making, or the design decision that you're taking should also weigh in this decision. And I think that on one hand, we have the size of the decision, if you want, the impact. On the other hand, it's like the risk. So the riskier the decision, the higher probability that research is a good idea. So I would also look at these two elements. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think for me, research is largely a de-risking exercise. And so if the question of whether or not you should be doing it, for me, is largely based on how much risk is involved in the first place. So like, how hard is it to build this thing that you're working on? How many people, how many users is it going to affect? How confident are you in the solutions that you have? You should be asking these questions to figure out whether or not research is really necessary. I really love this idea of tying research to risk.
I feel like you're both nailing it. Like, I have so many things to say, but you're both saying it so well that I just want to let you keep going. Another variable I'll add to that kind of risk versus impact is also sample size. For example, Ioana pointed out, like, changing an illustration, corner radius of a button, swapping out an icon, something like that. If they're in pretty low traffic areas, if it's not that important to, the primary flows of your product, then it's probably easy to just toss it into the product and run an A/B test or watch your metrics closely, right? Like, have your dashboard up or whatever. Whereas, spinning up like a usability testing batch of sessions to test that new icon probably it's not worth the reward, right? The risk reward ratio just isn't there. And so many times it might actually be more pertinent to just spin up a really quick experiment and toss it into the product and learn as you go, right? Like, you can shift that research cost from the front of your project to the end of your project and instead kind of learn and iteratively change it from there. And so I think having this model in our mind, like this one size fits all model of, like, I do research and then I do sketch and then I do my wireframes. Like, I think we can break that a little bit and say, no, learn when you need to, like, learn when it's riskiest or when it's most important that you have that knowledge.
I really like this idea of sometimes when the time is right, shipping and then doing the research or looking at your analytics or whatever, Hotjar, whatever you happen to have, because that works really well with agile and like continuous integration and just how dev teams tend to ship products nowadays. They tend to just be sort of off the cuff and getting things out into production. And so if there are little things like that are low risk that you can just get out and then test, I think that works really well. And it kind of meshes well with how dev teams work.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I just wanted to build on Taylor's point made earlier, that I think that this visual representation that we see everywhere of the design process, like being this very clear, linear journey, you go from one stage to another, it's super unrealistic. It's actually, in reality, you're not gonna work like that. If you're contemplating a UX design career, that's not what's in store for you. I think there's a lot of back and forth, and the design process and designing in general, it's non-linear. It's not, well, sometimes it may be. There are projects that feel cleaner in the sense that you go from the typical stage to another, and probably the back and forth is like minimal or it's like under control. But most times you're working like based on what's needed to understand and in the right time at the right place. So yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I would also look at, I think an important part of this conversation might be, can I do proper research or should I skip it because I can't do it right now? So that's also one thing that should be should be considered when asking whether I should skip research, because this kind of takes me to I think an old tweet by Jared Spool where he was arguing that sloppy UX research is better than no research, because no research costs nothing and brings nothing, but sloppy UX research is like costs money, and it also biases for negative outcomes, and you have the feeling that we know what we're doing, but you've actually did it very, I don't know, in a rush maybe, without planning it thoroughly, without the right sample size, without the right participants. Maybe things are very skewed by rushing it. So instead of doing sloppy research, consider skipping it altogether, and then maybe revisiting the problem, or I don't know, creating the space for a proper inquiry into that research question that you have. So I think that's also a time when skipping research might be a better idea.
I completely agree with this idea that I think is perpetuated by kind of the state of UX education right now. And good thing that you're in that space, Ioana, because it sounds like you have a lot of really great insights to share with some up and coming designers, because we likely come out of school or boot camp or whatever with like the double diamond in our brain, or some sort of process that has 5 loops in it that go through 5 different stages. and you hit your first job, and I imagine that most of our listeners are actually kind of mid-level designers in the trenches, and you realize like, oh, I can't actually do all that because I was just handed a project that needs to be done in like 5 days. And so being able to go through all that and check in with all your stakeholders and do all that starts to become unrealistic pretty quickly. And I think it is easy to it's easy to let research slide in that case. But I also want to give kind of a caveat that I think you do have to be careful to protect your research time, because if you skip it every time, you are going to be known as someone who can move really quickly. And everyone is going to expect you to move that quickly every time. And when I say quickly, I mean they're going to expect production level, high fidelity designs within that time frame every time. And so when you want to pull back and say, well, I need to slow down and do some research, it's going to feel that much more foreign and that much more painful. And so there has to be this give and take, right? And that's a relationship you have to create with your product manager or your UX manager, or whoever that is, to make sure that they understand the time you need. But it's such a delicate balance, right? Of knowing those projects where you need to stand your ground and it's like worth falling on your sword for research. And other times when, exactly like you said, Ioana, like, no, this would just be sloppy. Like this wouldn't actually help us. Let's just get to the meat of it and start learning once we're able to build this. So some of this is going to be a learning process, kind of developing that instinct for when don't I need research. And it's okay to get it wrong. And it's okay to do research maybe when you shouldn't have, or maybe skip research when you should have done it, and just keep learning and keep trying.
Yeah, and I think that I learned that lesson the hard way. I love the point about creating space for research. So just not ruining the expectations that other people should have of you. So always booking for research time when you're estimating your UX work. So definitely, yeah, I have to admit that in my own career, I learned that the hard way. So in the beginning, I thought that speed will show effectiveness, will show that I'm very good at doing design. So the faster I deliver, the better I'll be perceived. And then I realized that I'm setting myself up for hard conversations and disappointments in the future. And so it's really important that you book the space for research, even if you decide to skip it. And getting back to the skip reasons, I think another essential point that I want to make sure that I make in this conversation is that I'd say it's impetuous that you actually explore the reasons for which you want to skip research. So always sit down and do this introspection exercise and try to understand, why am I considering skipping research? Am I super pressured into delivering fast? Do I feel like I don't have the support I need in my company? Do I feel like I don't have the resources, the money, the time? Do I feel like I already know the answers? Or do I think my solution is perfect? So always, it may be that any of these reasons are valid, and it's okay to decide, okay, I know the reason and I'm still deciding to skip research. But sometimes it may be that the problem that sits at the core of this dilemma, at the foundation of this dilemma, can be addressed otherwise in a different way. And so you might be like avoiding research because there's something else pressuring you, or in the entire team, it might be a decision that can be solved in another place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man, I love that. I hadn't even thought about that, and that's such a great point. Because I feel like research is such an integral part of UX and product design that if you're choosing to skip it, it needs to be for a conscious reason. So just being aware of the reason is really important. I really like that.
I imagine there's also some listeners who are hearing this and thinking, okay, so basically what you're saying is I just have to figure out when I do and don't need research, right? Because kind of what we're coming down to is this is a skill. Like this is a muscle that you need to develop. And there's not like a silver bullet. There's not a perfect answer every time, or some formula or another framework or flowchart or something that we can give you of exactly when you do and don't do research. And so if any of our listeners are wondering, maybe we can shift the discussion a little bit in this direction. How do you develop that skill? And I think one thing to do is to surround yourself with people who can give you that feedback, right? So that might be members of your product or engineering squad or team. That might be your direct design leadership, but someone who kind of has a more objective perspective of what you're doing and can say, yeah, that one probably should have had research and here's why. And maybe here's some of the pressures that you gave into, right? You probably heard the CEO, tapping his feet and wanting this to get done more quickly. And maybe you skipped it for that reason or something. And so surrounding yourself in an environment of feedback is one of the quickest ways to do that. And also listening to resources like this and people like Ioana, but finding ways that you can kind of test your ideas where you can be reflective and maybe diagnose some of those reasons why you may or may not have done it in a certain situation.
And I think that it comes with experience. So it's something that you learn, and sometimes you learn by mistake, by mistake and through mistakes. And I think that it's something that indeed separates like the apprenticeship as a UX designer from the senior stage of one's career. I think that understanding when you can skip and when you should do research is a skill that definitely comes with experience. And I love your point about surrounding yourself with people who might give you the right feedback, and also seeking mentorship is something that's like part of what you're saying. But I would like just pinpoint the word mentorship. Find senior designers that are more senior than you, obviously, and that can you can reflect on your process and your projects and your design work alongside them, and help see through the lens of somebody who's maybe more experienced and has had those situations, or can give you a perspective that you were missing. And I think that's how you learn and you get better at understanding what's the ballpark, the room for improvising in a way. It's not improvising, but it's like adjusting from one project to another, if you want.
Yeah, you can probably use a lot of the principles of research in building the skill. Like you can sort of go through a project and do what you thought you should have, and then look back and reflect afterward and see what the results were and what you can learn from that, I think. So, for example, sometimes maybe you go through a project and you decided not to do research for such and such reason. And then you get to the end of the project and you realize from the results that actually happened, oh man, I should have done research. So I think just like being aware and conscious and proactively trying to build this skill, I think you'll get there eventually, because it's your job. You're in it every day. As long as you're trying and you're, being conscious about it, I think it'll happen eventually.
I think it can translate into this new mantra that I'm gonna promote. It's called research your research. I think that we should all be researching our research.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. It's just like we would develop any other skill, right? And it's not just that the research skills are the specific methods that you do and how good of an interviewer you are, but it's also the timing of it and knowing how long to do it and which projects to include it on. That's like, it's almost like this research awareness, right? And so I think making sure you have the time to be reflective on that. I would also encourage me and everyone else to be authentic in that. So I try to be really open with my teams and just say, like, we are really crunched for time. Like, is there anyone who can pick this thing up so I can go talk to a few customers, right? Like, could someone do this for me, or what can I delegate, or how can we share responsibilities? Or maybe my product manager, someone else can pick up some of those interviews, right? And I can maybe coach them or help them analyze the data or something. But being very resourceful and also very open about that process, so that you don't accidentally set the expectation that you're the really fast production designer who can skip research and get everything right, or something. And so being authentic, being open, and being willing to have those hard conversations where it's like, I know that I skipped research on the last project and we moved really quickly, and like, I don't think we can do that here, and here's why. Here are the things I'm worried about. Here are the reasons. Let's talk about it and see where we can put our resources. And I think that only good can come from having those important conversations. So don't feel like this is your burden to bear alone, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we're coming up on time. I think that's a great point to end on, this note of building up the skill. So thanks a lot today for this conversation, Ioana. I'm sure our listeners learned a ton. I learned several things, so that this was really great for me. Thank you very much. I think you were a perfect guest for this particular topic. So where can people learn more about you or follow along with the work that you're doing?
Thanks for the question, Jordan. And thank you both for the invitation. It's been a conversation that helped me articulate some of the thoughts I had around the topic. So it was really interesting, and I feel like I like had coffee with designers. It's like something I've missed with the pandemic, and also that's really nice. People can find me on Instagram as UX Goodies and Mento Design Academy. So Mento is the name of my UX bootcamp, and they can find it on Instagram, or if they reach out to me on UX Goodies, we can discuss about it. And I think also you can look me up by my name on on LinkedIn, and we can connect there as well. If anybody wants to explore any sort of conversation with me, I'm super open. I'm now actually looking to build new connections and have new conversations around different topics. So your invitation was very timely. And I think that's me, UX Goodies, Mento Design Academy, and that's it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ioana. I really thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much. I learned a lot as well from a lot of the ideas that you shared. And we'll be sure to include UX Goodies and Mento Design Academy in the show notes. So for our listeners, feel free to check those out. Thanks everyone for listening and watching today. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, UX Chats is a podcast from UX Tools. You can find out more about us at uxtools.co.
And be sure to follow or subscribe. If you found this episode useful, please leave us a rating and review, or simply share the episode with someone you know. That would be super helpful.
We'll see you next time.